mathematics of minus 4n. So the minus of n, we take that each and every element so that we have for one, the first have this one. So we reduce the one is 2, 1, 1. We are reducing this and this. We must this. So it's 2, 1, 1. We go to the second term. 1. So this goes from 1 from 2. If you come from 1 from 2, we have this. So it's 1, 1. Then it's 1. Let's go to the third term.
Please.
2 is all from 1 or 1. 1, 2, 1. Top 1. So it's row 2 from 1 to be passed. We are getting this. So we are 2, 1, 1. Let us do it for the second term. 2. This one. This was row 2. From 2, this is 1, 2, 1. Then we go to the third term in row 2. This is row 2, column 3. If we this row 2, column 3, this is 1, 1. Establish, then it's 1. We do the same for row 3. Row 3 first term is 2. So if we do this, we press 2 by the term by the half. It's on row 3 from 1. We keep row 3 from 1 plus 1, 2, then 2, 1. We go to the second term row 3 from 2. We need to row 3 from 2. We pass 1, 2. Then 1, 1. Then the last term 1. This row 3 from 3. We need to row 3 from 3. We pass this 1, 1, 1, 2. So this is the matrix of minus. So if you are ready to determine you have 2 by 1 is 2, and 1 by 1, which 2 minus 1, that is 1. The second term, this by 2 is 1. This by 2 is 2. So 1 minus 2, that is 1. The second term, 1 by 1 is 1. 2 by 2 is 4. 1 minus 4. 4, 2. 1 by 1 is 1. 2 by 2 is 2. 1 minus 2, that is minus 1. The second term, 1 by 1 is 1. 2 by 2 is 4. So 1 minus 4, that is minus 1 is 1. 2, that is minus 1. For the third term, 1 by 1 is 1. 2 by 2 is 4. 1 minus 4, that is minus 3. 1 by 1 is 1. 2 by 1 is 2. 1 minus 2 minus 1. 1 by 2 is 2. 1 by 1 is 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. So this is the matrix that we are trying to matrix of minus. Then the third step was to find what we are trying to the four factors. The four factors, we say we are trying to last, so we are trying this to be. So the one positive. So the four factors will be 1. The second one is negative. So that will give you a positive. A positive is a negative, that will give you a negative. For row 1. For row 2, we start with a negative. A negative is a negative, that will give you a positive 1. The second term is positive, is negative. A positive is a negative, that gives you a negative 3. Then finally is negative, the negative, and give you a positive 1. You have to very careful. Row positive, positive, negative, positive. So a positive is a negative, that gives you a negative 3. A positive 1. Then a positive is a positive, that gives you a positive 1. So that is the cofactor matrix after writing the sequence of challenge, the matrix of minus. Then the fourth step was to get what we refer as the adjoint matrix. We say that the adjoint matrix is the transpose of the cofactor matrix. Before we discuss about the transpose, we say that transpose, these are obtained by a matrix obtained by either changing the row and the columns of the matrix, the rows become the columns and the columns become the rows. So if you transpose the cofactor matrix, the first row will become the first column, you have 1, 1, 3. The second row will become the second column, 1, 3, 1. Then the third row becomes the third column, -3, 1, 1. And that was the third person. Then finally, we detach now the inverse matrix, which we say that is 1 over the determinant times the additive. So this will give you our determinant of -4. So this -1 over 4 by 1, 1, -3, 1, -3, 1, -3, 1, 1. And this takes us back to what we were finding earlier, that this is a scalar multiplication, that each and every element of the matrix is multiplied by the scalar. So if the matrix is the inverse of the matrix n, and we say that the not this are n, this is the negative, because this is the inverse. Recall the general form of the matrix. He said that if I have a matrix A, then A times its inverse will always be equal to its inverse by A, and this will give you an identity. This was a general form that we can use. We got this in 2 by 2. The same can be seen in 3 by 3. That if I have a matrix, this product the inverse must give me an identity. So we can get the inverse of 2 by 3 by first looking at the determinant, what if it's square or not. You already have to minus each of the elements of the matrix by the determinant of simply 2 by 2. How do we do it? We delete the row and the column where the element is blank. One of the blank matrix of determinant of the use 2 by 2. When you are practicing to find that is referred to as the cofactor. So we get the cofactor. So with the cofactor matrix, you cannot transpose. If you transpose the cofactor matrix, then we get the adjoint. The adjoint matrix, we are going to break the inverse, because the inverse of the matrix is 1 over the determinant and adjoint matrix. We did that as a multiplication, and we did see how the scalar multiplication is. We can prove this by writing A inverse or A inverse A, and this matrix identity matrix of the 3, because this is a 3 by 2 matrix. This is what we did see last time. So with this in mind, we will be able to use this what we call the inversion, or otherwise the Laplace method. That we go through the process of getting the determinant, the matrix of minus, the matrix of cofactors, and the adjoint matrix, for us to replace the inverse of the matrix. This concept, for those of you who are in business, for those of you in mathematics, you will expand this so that you can use for any matrix, of any order, say M by N. But because this equivalent to any M by N matrix, then you can keep on reducing from whatever number we reduce until you get 2. Reduced by 2, then we can calculate, and that gives us the inverse of that matrix. That's the general form, and that's in advanced language. That's what we expect. But as we did say about the use of the matrix and the application of the matrix as a different, how we are using the row, how we are using the house, not but an arrangement that gives us some order. And this is where matrix is come. We appreciate people who have an organized group where things have been arranged in order. In supermarkets, we have arranged, they do arrange things in some given rows and columns, and this is exactly what matrix arrangement is about. It's easier for us to identify, it's easier for us to judge, and this is what it's all about. So, having done that, then we are left with how do we now find solutions to 3 by 2 matrices. Let us look at how to use this inverse to get the solution as we might have to discussion on matrix algebra. Now, as we saw in 2 by 2 matrices, we can apply of 2 by 2 and escalate to 3 by 3. By 3 by 3, we can also system of linear equations involving 3 equations and 3 unknowns. This is what 3 by 3 is all about. So we saw either that we can use the inverse or we can use the Cramer's rule. The same can be applied to 3 by 3. Let us see how we can now apply 3 by 3 to solve those equations. We shall do this with examples. So we want to solve this system of equations. 2x plus y plus 4z. This is equal to 12. X plus 2y plus 2z is equal to 9. And 3x minus 3y minus 2z, this is equal to 1. Now, these are 3 vectors with 3 unknowns: x, y, and z. Recall from 2 by 2, when we extract the system of matrix equation. Extract the system of matrix equation. Matrix of coefficients, matrix of unknowns, and then the matrix of constants. Evaluate, extract them. Extract those matrices. If you look at x in the first equation is 2, in the second equation is 1, in the third equation is 3. Look at those in y. The coefficient of y in the first equation is 1, in the second equation is 2, in the third equation is minus 3. Look at those in z. The first is 4, then 2, then minus 2. But because I want to write this so that I get the equations, then the unknowns will be in the column form x, y, and z. I'm writing this so that I differentiate this from the 2. And this will give us the constants 12, 9, 1. So this is the matrix equations. And the way we saw last time, then this is what we refer to as the coefficient matrix. This one was the matrix of unknowns. And these ones was the matrix of constants. Constants are also referred to as the resultants. This is coefficient matrix. So we have three matrices: matrix of coefficient, matrix of unknowns, three, negative 3, negative 2. When I write this one, you write the determinant. This will be equal to from 1. It is 2, the 2 by 2, from 1 from 1, 2, negative 3, negative 2. Minus 1. The first is plus, the second is minus. From the sequence of the question, from 2, these are the 1. No, 1, 2, sorry. Then 3, negative 2. Plus, the third term is 4. Row 1 from 3, 1, 2. Then it's row 1 from 3, 3, negative 3. Let us evaluate that determinant. Evaluate that determinant to see what we get. You can put your hand on the chat box. Put your hand on the chat box. You are muted, please. Yes. So for your determinant, put it on the chat box. I'm waiting to see answers on the chat box. So I see some whatever this and this negative 4 minus minus 1. This has 2 minus plus 4. This has minus 3 minus this has 6. So this will be 2 times. And then negative equals to 6. That's 2. Then you have 1. Plus 4. 9. this will be 4 plus 8 minus that is minus 6. So this is equal to minus 24. Minus 24. Now with this, the way we saw last time, then we can transform this into grammar. We did say that for us to get the solution for x, recall we are increasing the solution of x by the x factor. So if you get the solution for x and get 1, then 1, also y means 1, 2, -3, then 4, 2, -2. Divided by the determinant of the coefficient matrix 2, 1, 4, 1, 2, 2, then 3, -3, -2. For y, we don't replace the coefficient of y. Those of x is made as 2, 1, 3. And those of y will be 2 times 12, 9, 1. Then those of z 4, 2, -2, divided by the determinant of the coefficient matrix 2, 1, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2. Then finally for z, the coefficient matrix, we measure the coefficient of z by the constants. So both of x will remain 2, 1, 3. Those of y remain 1, 2, -3. And those of z now change to 12, 9, 1. Right? This determinant by the coefficient determinant of the coefficient matrix 2, 1, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, -2. So let us remember that variables determinants not the determinants. Can you share your answers in the chat box? Answers for X, Y, and Z. We are not seeing clearly. They are saying we are not seeing clearly. Yeah. We have noted some Zoom kiasi, sioni vizuri. Zoom, please. I think we have noted that. Maximize the screen. I think we are taking note of that. Yeah. I think up goes out. X is 3. Y is 2. Z is 1. X is 3, Y is 2, Z is 1. Wrong for Y. 3 to 1. Please check, work out those determinants.
Yameandika registration numbers yake 1 2 3 6 times. Are you through? So they are getting it. Now, see, X is 3, Y is 2, and Z is 1. That's what you are getting. So this is by the inversion. Let us see if it will give us the same result. So we already know that. So what we need to do is move forward against the matrix of minus. Matrix of minus from the coefficient matrix. This is matrix of minus. So we replace each other element by introduced 2 by 2. So we are at the matrix of coefficient. So we replace 2. From 2 to 2, then negative 3, negative 2. Then the next time row 1 is 1. Repeating row 1 and 2. That becomes 1, 3 negative 2. 1, 2, 3 negative 2. Replacing the element 4 is on row 1 from 2, that becomes 1, 2, 3 negative 3. 1, 2, 3 negative 3. We do the same for row 2. The first element is 1. This is row 2 from 1 becomes 1, 4, negative 3, negative 2. 1 4, negative 3, negative 2. The second term is this 2. So 2 is on row 2 from 2. 3 on row 2 from 2 equals 2, 4, 3 negative 2. 2, 4, 3 negative 2. Then the last term, last 2. This 2 is on row 2 from 3. This row 2 from 3 equals 2, 1, 3 negative 3. 2, 1, 3 negative 3. Then row 3. First term is 3. It's on row 3 from 1. It is another 1, 4, 2. We have to be very careful so that we reach the correct elements. The second term is negative 3. Negative 3 on row 3 from Repeat that 2, 4, 1, 2. 2, 4, 1, 2. Good. Then the last time, -2. -2 is not row 3 for 3. Repeating that 2, 4, 1, 1, 2. So evaluating this determinant gives you this and this is -4 minus this and this -6. So that will give you 2 because this product. The second term, this and this is -2. This and this is -6 minus 6. That will give you -8. The third term, this and this is -3 minus this and this 6. That gives you -9. For row 2, this and this is -2. This and this is -12. That gives you 10. Second term, this is determinant. 2 by -2, that gives you -4 minus 4 by 3, that gives you 12. So -4 by 12, that gives you -16. The third term, 2 by -3 is -6 minus 1 by 3 is 3. That gives you -9. Row 3, 1 by 2 is 2 minus 4 by 2 is 8. 2 minus 8 -6. 2 by 2 is 4 minus 4 by 1 is 4. That gives you 0. 2 by 2 is 4 minus 1 by 1 is 1. That gives you 3. So that becomes our matrix of minus. Please check and confirm the accuracy of our values. Check and confirm the accuracy of our values so that we can have the correct figures. Then we get the matrix of 4 factors. So we are applying the sequence of signs. That minus plus, minus plus minus, minus plus minus plus. For row 1, the first is positive. So that is the positive. The second is negative. The negative is 8. The third is positive. The negative is 9. For row 2, positive, negative, 10. Positive, negative, negative 16. Negative, negative, give you positive 9. The third row, sequence of signs, plus, minus, plus. Plus, the negative, minus 6. Of course, 0 is 0. For 0 is the different point. Then plus, plus, 3. And therefore, the argument matrix is equal to, we transform all the matrix of our from 1 comes from 1 to 2, 8, negative 9. Row 2 becomes from 2, negative 10, negative 16, then 9. Then row 3 becomes from 3, negative 6, 0, 3. That is the argument, and therefore, in balance is equal to 1 all over. The term was negative 24. This is negative 24 minus 2, negative 10, negative 6, 8, negative 16, 0, 9, 9, 3. That is when you look at the areas marked. So how do we solve? If we multiply by the numbers, which means beside the numbers, then what are the right hand side? So if you want to numbers, you can have negative 1, 24, 9, 2, negative 10, negative 6, 8, negative 16, 0, negative 9, 9, 3. That's a inverse 5. The coefficients 2, 1, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, negative 3, negative 2. Multiplied by x, y, z. And this will give you the right hand side will multiply by the inverse. Negative 1 over 24 times 2, negative 10, negative 6, 8, negative 16, 0, negative 9, 3, that is inverse, times the constants 12, 9, 1. So work out this so that you have x, y, and z. Then you will go to 1. But these are the numbers people give you the constant. So you go to the right hand side and see the result that you get. Share them with the challenge. Be very careful with the size multiplication. We looked at multiplication. Sauti imepotea hapa, mnanipata? Labda. I'm audible enough.
Mute people. Three, two, one. Please pardon. No, two diagrams. I've drawn a diagram. So which diagrams are you talking about? Thank you. You are getting me loud and clear. Thank you, Edwin. Boroboro. Ndiema, what do you want to pardon? Write it. The man we think are difficult, sir. Where are they difficult? Your colleagues are saying it's clear.
And Z is 1, which is similar to what we have gotten earlier. So some of you are asking that we do another example. Yes, we'll do another example, but this you will do it yourself, and perhaps you can discuss and then come to consult. So you can try the following exercise. Number 1, it says find the value of x for which the following matrices are singular. Number A, x squared, x 3x minus 2, then x. Number B, 9, 8, x, 6. Find the value of x for which the following matrices are singular.
Hello? We had lost connectivity. We had lost connectivity. So we are trying to restore. Oh, over 360 are online. Na huko kwingine pia wako. Ili si wataipata. Siwasikii. Kwa nini utusikii? Kelvin, check connections on your side. Justus, if you have an issue, share on the screen. Kwenda kwa another thing. Imerudi. Have they copied that?
No, let me suggest to tell them to copy.
These are my exercises.
Network for down. Data Zoom imekataa kunini.
I'm on my network.
Yeah, I've seen it on my network.
Mimi sielewi kabisa tangu klasi ianze. Yao kitaumana. Share the screen, sinima share. Do for as part or A of the question. Do for as part A of the question.
Meanwhile, you can tell them that question on PowerPoint, when you tell them to write down as we move the next side of the panel.
Okay. But if they are seeing my screen.
Okay. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 4x 2y 2z. Z. Yani yangu nilikuwa natoka hapa niko kazi. Kama good. Are they connected? What I'm typing. You can copy from the screen. I've shared my screen. So are we through? We proceed. So we wish to proceed. Look at that those exercises, and if you have an issue, kindly check with me. I'm always available in the office for consultations. So I wish that we look at something different. I wish that we proceed, then we look at our second last topic area, and this is taxation. Remember when we discussed public finance the other time, we said that public finance deals with certain functions, financing of state activities for certain functions. And we named basically 4 functions: 1, protective function; 2, administrative function; 3, the social function; and 4, the development function. We went ahead under and said that for the government to perform those functions, there is need for it to generate funds and expend them appropriately. And therefore, we redefined public finance as to include public revenue and public expenditure. When we did say this, we looked at public revenue as to include those incomes of the government, and one of the sources of the income of the government was through tax. We said that a tax is a compulsory contribution that is imposed on individuals to meet the expenses which are incurred for a common cause. That in the tax, we are all contributing to one common basket, and from that common basket, we are to expend the necessary expenditures thereof. This means that a tax system must have 2 main characteristics. 1, there is that element of compulsory contribution. Everybody must, and I'm saying that everybody must contribute. And number 2, it doesn't matter how much you are contributing, because you cannot demand for an equal service for the tax contributed. Therefore, there's no direct service against the payment of the tax, because we are pulling together resources and spending them for a common cause for that purpose. So it's compulsory in this nature, and there's no direct service to that effect. So this means that despite that compulsory nature, that an individual has no right to demand for that service to him. That I'm contributing 10 billion per month or in a year, so I should get an equivalent of the 10 billion. No. That I am contributing the least, so I should get the least services. No. That a tax is only compulsory in its nature, and therefore all individuals are compelled to contribute so that the government can spend from the same pool for it to meet the functions that we did look at under public finance. It is to this effect that all the tax collected is therefore pulled together, and expenditures are done based on the guiding principles that we discussed earlier. We saw that there are basically 5 principles that guide public expenditure. One is the principle of economy, where we said that it is the responsibility of the government and its citizens to generate funds to support the activities of the government. We have the principle of maximum social benefit. We have the principle of sound financial management, where all the accounts must be recorded as accurately as possible, and auditing must be done so that we discover if there are any discrepancies. As we look at this, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to focus on what the government is doing in the recent past. We had that concerned about this issue of tax, that some people had been exempted from paying tax, and now it's compulsory that they must pay. And we have heard this from the head of state, who says that everybody must pay. So what is it that guides this issue of taxation? What principles are there? As we look at these principles, kindly note that the first 4 principles were the ones that were given by a great economist called Adam Smith. So as we look at this, let us synchronize them and look at how is it in terms of our government and in terms of our devolved systems at the county levels. So there are various types of taxes. One, the income tax. Income tax is that which is imposed on the incomes of individuals. Income tax is anything that you receive as an income to you as an individual must be subjected. Corporate tax, this goes to the profits of public companies, public limited companies. So the profits of companies, businesses must be taxed. The sales tax, anything on the sale of commodities applies to businessmen. Excise tax, this deals with the imports. Whatever that you are importing is custom duty. Anything that you are paying for exporting falls under this category. Then the excise production of commodities by production companies and industries, they must also pay because they are in the business and they are making profits thereof. So as we look at this, there are various types of taxes you can read about. There's ad valorem tax that is imposed on certain commodities, especially those which are deemed to have an element of being contraband. So we need to understand and differentiate and know that which tax applies where, because everything that we do, any activity that we conduct has that tax element, and we must pay, because we are saying that a tax is a compulsory contribution which we are imposing on individuals. Whatever they are doing, we must impose a tax. So that is by law, and this does not require that you get the direct service for contributing to that tax. So let us look at these principles of taxation. And as I said, the first 4, what is being projected is what is derived from the great economists. Then subsequent ones were developed from these 4, as we are going to see. So the first principle is the principle of equality. What does equality imply? With equality, it means every individual in the country must contribute towards the support of the government. That you must contribute, whether you are a student, you are a farmer, you are a house girl, you must contribute. And the contribution should be proportional to your respective abilities. Meaning that if you have more, you should pay more tax. If you have less, you pay less tax. That's the simplest way of explaining the principle of equality, that individuals must contribute based on their respective abilities. If you are working, you pay tax on your salaries. If you run a business, you pay tax on the business. If you have a company, you pay tax on the profits of that company. Therefore, the more you have, the more you ought to contribute towards the government. Then we have the principle of certainty. With this principle, the tax which each individual must pay should be certain and not arbitrary. Certainty, that we must be certain of what we are supposed to pay. What does this therefore imply? That a proper system should be put in place such that every individual must know his tax obligation. What are some of the measures that have been put in place so that the individuals know? We have graduated scales or schedules for taxation. That the minimum to be taxed is about 10,000, which was revised to about 12,000. That's the minimum that you should pay tax. Anything above that must pay. So we must know, we are certain when are we supposed to pay. And we know that if you are earning a salary, it is paid at the time of payment of the salary. If you are doing a business, we know it's paid at the time of the sales. So it's convenient, it is certain. The principle of convenience now reflects in the timing. Convenience implies the timing. At what point in time are you supposed to pay? And by which mode, by which method are you supposed to use to pay? Take, for example, you as a student, you are going to buy items in a supermarket or any other person. That there are items that have the tax component. What point do you pay? You pay that tax inclusive in the price of the commodity. Look at the timing. That the time and method must be convenient to the taxpayer as much as possible. In fact, most payments are therefore of the tax are imposed at the source. If it's salary, you are paying as you earn at the time of the payment of the salary. If it's buying a commodity, you are paying for the tax at the time of buying that item. And this tax so collected is collected and remitted to the government. And therefore, all the relevant taxes are paid at the source. This makes it more convenient in terms of the time and the method of payment to the taxpayer. The principle of economy. Economy is very important principle. That every tax has a cost of its collection. For us to generate income for the government, this cost must be minimal so that we can realize something for the government. That the government has staff, it has expenditures. Any cost of production, in production, any item that is produced has a cost. So this cost should be kept at minimum. Why do we keep it at minimum? So that we are able to generate more than the cost, so that that which is more is what can be given to the government, and that's what we are referring to as the revenue to the government. So this implies, in layman's language, that at all times we must ensure that the cost of collection of a tax is normally lower than the amount of tax that is collected for that matter. So these four are the principles that were given by Adam Smith. The next five principles, were derived from this to make it more simpler for people to understand and application in terms of implementation of the tax policies. This will include one, productivity. This postulates that any tax system should be able to yield enough revenue for the treasury. Why do we talk of yielding enough revenue? That we must provide enough money for the treasury. Recall we talked about a deficit budget a deficit when the expenses are more than the income. That's a deficit. So we should avoid having more of those deficits. A situation of more deficits is what we are referring to as deficit financing. That productivity in itself postulates that we must yield enough so that we avoid having those negatives, spending more than what we can generate. This is in essence what should always provide funds for the government to mitigate any deficits in terms of the budget and business and other activities. The other principle is the principle of buoyancy. What is buoyancy? Buoyancy is the inherent ability of the tax revenue to increase with the tax national income. That we should have the tax system designed such that for any additional increase in the income, the tax revenue also increases automatically. Take, for example, for those who are working, if there is an increase of, say, 100 shillings on somebody's basic salary, that income should also be subjected and cause an increase in terms of the pay as you earn tax or otherwise the income tax. This is what we are talking about. And therefore, this inherent tendency to increase the tax revenue with the national income, even if we retain all other factors constant, like the tax rate, the tax base, the coverage, then is what we are defining to be buoyancy. Another principle is the principle of flexibility, where flexibility should give priority to authorities so that they are able to revise the tax structure, and we talk of the structure to mean the tax rates and the coverage, so that they may suit the changing economies of the time. Recall during President Uhuru Kenyatta's time, Parliament was reconstituted while it was on recess. To do what? To approve the tax structure. They increased the taxes. Remember, during Corona, we reduced, the government reduced the tax rates. And this is what we are talking about, that a tax system should be flexible enough so that the government is able to revise its structures regarding the taxes so that they suit the changing requirements of the time based on the economy. Simplicity principle follows from the word being simple. So with simplicity, this provides that all the tax policies should be simple for people to understand. And when they are easy for people to understand, it will be easy for the government also to administer as it implements. So it must be so simple for taxpayers. The policies must be simple for the government, so as we have ease of implementation as we carry out our duty of paying tax. And of course, the principle of diversity, that we have different types of taxes that are spread across, so that people pay at different categories at different levels. And why do we do this? We are spreading the burden, that the burden is not imposed on certain groups of people only, but spreads across all the people based on their abilities and capabilities, as we saw under the principle of equality. That to this end, therefore, diversity implies spreading the tax burden so that it's on the different groups of people in society. For you as a student, you are given help. Help is not taxed. But when you go to spend, the same money you have been given through donation, through harambes, through help, you are paying a tax. If it's in a supermarket, you are paying a tax inclusive in those prices of commodities. I am employed, I pay income tax. But when I go to spend whatever I've been given, I also pay tax just like any other person. So this is what we are talking about. that diversity is intended to ensure that every person must contribute, and his contribution towards the support of the government is done through the payment of the tax. This is the essence. This is what guides. These 9 principles are what constitutes an ideal, or what we refer to as a good tax system. So a good tax system should be that which meets most, if not all, of these principles of taxation. That an ideal system must strive towards meeting, if not all, but majority or most of these principles. So as we do this, ladies and gentlemen, we realize that we can evaluate our own tax system in Kenya and see if it's indeed good or ideal by evaluating each of those 9 principles. Is it simple? Is it diverse? Does it observe equality? Does it observe buoyancy, productivity? Is it convenient? Is it certain, or whatever? So if we look at this, we should be able to judge our own tax system so that we conclude that it is either ideal or not. But as far as it is of now, it seems to be ideal. But the bone of contention in this country, and you'll find that there is always a public outcry. This public outcry is about the high tax rates, that people are being overtaxed. But this is not a problem in Kenya. An analysis has shown that the percentage proportion of tax revenue in relation to the GDP, the gross domestic product, recall we talked about the gross domestic product, the market value of all the finished goods and services in a financial year. That if you compare the GDP of now, we are calling them developing countries, but they are just less developed. And Kenya will fall in that bracket. That if you compare the developed or the first world, compare with the middle economies and now the low economies, you will find that the percentage proportion of the tax revenue in less or developing countries regarding their GDP and compared to those of the less developed countries, then you see that it is lower. Why is it lower? This is primarily because of what we are saying, the high tax rates. That's why you see people are saying there's a lot, we are being taxed too much, and the like. Why are we being taxed too much? We have seen that this is the only way the government can raise funds. Now, as we raise these funds to meet our functions, where else do we get that the citizens in these countries, especially Kenya, where they feel that they are heavily taxed, have resolved to 2 things. 1, tax avoidance, and 2, tax evasion. That people have developed and resorted to ways of evading to pay their tax liabilities. How have they succeeded? They have succeeded because there exist certain shortcomings, certain loopholes in the tax system. Despite having robust principles, despite being a good or ideal tax system, people have managed to navigate around this tax and tax payment. So when we talk of evasion and evading, avoiding, when you avoid, you don't pay. But when you evade, you are paying, but you are not paying as required. Evading is illegal because you are capitalizing on the loopholes. But avoidance is illegal because you are not paying anything. These 2 things normally confuse tax avoidance and tax evasion. When you avoid, no payment. And that's an illegal practice. When you evade, you are paying, but you are not paying as to what you are supposed to pay. The essence is you are paying less. So what does this mean? That tax evasion has certain loopholes. Those loopholes or shortcomings in the system are the ones that cause people not to pay fully their tax liabilities to meet their tax obligations. So what are some of these loopholes? And as we look at this, let us think about our country, Kenya. Let us think about ourselves and even think locally to where we are in our devolved systems. That tax evasion is simply where an individual fails to meet his or her tax liability as required, because they are capitalizing on some shortfalls or loopholes that exist in the tax system. Some of these include the following. There are 5 in number. 1 is lack of information gap at all levels. How do we say that there is information gap? That there are those records that are kept by businesses. Some of these records are inappropriate. They are not accurate. Remember, public expenditure, sound financial management principle, that we must keep as accurately as possible our records. And we must have them audited in order to investigate discrepancies. But is that happening? That you go to some shops, they keep inappropriate records. They conceal the factual evidence. Something that expose that they are operating as small businesses. Yet, in that pretense of small businesses, they are operating big businesses, and therefore they don't pay the tax as required. I don't know if you have realized that you may go to a shop, you want a given item. Let me talk like a Jaluo. I want a 5 CD changer. You know, they think big and they talk big and they do big things. That you see there, maybe just CD players, the ordinary ones. But when you ask that you wanted a 3 CD or 5 CD changer, they'll tell you, yes, we have it. Then they will go behind the shelves and they bring you the 5 CD changer. That is concealing the factual evidence. You go to a shop, they don't want to give you the ETR receipt. They give you the handwritten receipt. They are concealing factual evidence. And when it now comes to auditing and payment of tax, they will have already concealed because it will not have passed through the system. This is what we are talking about. Talk about some contraband products. I know these days for you, you don't organize for parties in December. You only know going for local matanga dance. And when you go there, there is a
Sorry for the. I think the image internet is back. Just a minute, the internet is back.
Hello? Where are we? Are you seeing my screen? I don't put there. I hope I'm not. Yeah. So what we are saying in simple layman's language that information gap where businesses operate as a small scale yet they are large scale businesses. This is what is causing all this. Then we have complicated tax law. We have said as a principle that we must need first to have simplicity, simple. The tax laws must be simple for people to understand and easy for the government to use. So it's a we are having fluctuations. We are sorry for that. That these products and the application of value-added tax, which items do we know by law have to include the VAT in their prices? We don't know. How do we go ahead to give the tax rebates? We don't know. That these changing provisions through what we are the rationalization of commodities, we don't understand. Consumers rarely know. For you, you go there, you say, unga is 170 shillings. But when you buy it, they will tell you, check your receipts from the supermarket. They will tell you that these items attract VAT. But why should they some of them attract? We don't know which ones. So if you have a scrupulous businessman, you will be charged. And some, the way I say it, they will not be charged. Now we have the concealment of true ownership. How does this become an issue? That we are investing property in other people's name because we know now we are supposed to declare our wealth and explain, recall what Matiang'i is going through. They are saying that they must have him explain how he accumulated his wealth since 2012. That there are always tendencies on investing in Mutoto and Mutoto was saying, your only children. How can a 10-year-old child have millions of money in his or her account? Where did she work? This concealment. That we may invest in other people's names. And now this makes it very difficult. A case example. I'm using this example in good faith. Because we know that there's construction going around in this university. And the VC being the CEO or any other CEOs elsewhere, they may want kickbacks, 10% kickback. What happened? Even the governors in the county government, they demand for kickbacks. Those CEC members, the chief officers, do they receive the cash? No. But they will send another person, the 50th person is the person who will get the money before they are taken to them. Some of them have been built mansionettes for some deals. This concealment. And of course, imperfect tax administration, all of us are human beings. And as human beings, we are amenable to temptations which lead to corruption. Corruption is anything now. Scratch my back, I scratch yours. That these tax laws are not easy and simple. They are very complicated for people to understand. That because once again is a human being and is amenable to temptation, you buy him lunch, he will give you 1 mark for free. It's worse with these tax officers. Because these officials, they are just like another human beings. They come, you have not filed your returns, you have filed your returns wrongly, you have undervalued your tax, then you share the difference. Instead of taking 10 million, you have paid 5 million. So in the remaining that you have concealed the 5 million, what happened? You give them 2 million and they leave you with 3 million. That's what we are saying. And this is what is happening. So as much as the system might be ideal, we have that such as challenges and loopholes that exist. How about when you are politically correct? Politically correct. If you say ni wewe tu baba, kila kitu nasema tutafanya baba, hata reli tutangoa baba, barabara tutafunga, maandamano tutaenda baba, then he knows that you are his right hand person. When you get there, even if you don't pay tax, who will say, look at what happened to Karachi Industries? We are all here last year, when it was closed down for non-payment of millions of taxes. What is happening today? This is just an example of allegiance to political parties. See what the current government is doing. Following up to the retired presidents. In fact, Uhuru's property and the Kenyatta's family, they're in trouble. Why? Because they are now on the other side of the political divide. The loyalty changed. But if you pledge your loyalty to the ruling party, then you seem to enjoy certain things which may not be limited to. And therefore, they may include tax exemptions. This is what we are saying. This is what we are talking about. So, the 5 are the identified loopholes. And these are truly there. And they exist in our country, Kenya, even in our respective counties. But what is it? What measures have been taken so that we reduce this element of evasion? What is it that we are doing so that we don't leave this vice go unabated? That there are certain measures that have been taken so that we reduce these loopholes. These are some of the remedial measures. And as we look at these remedial measures, check to it and see to it that we or the government has put in place. Number 1 is that we must have some conceptual definition of what income is. When you talk about income as anything that somebody receives, let that be applied across the board. Let us have the right laws in place. Let us not tax like what the tax applied to MPs. All the allowances are not taxed. Yet for me, who is also paid by the same exchequer, I'm taxed on everything, including my per diem that I get, subsistence. So what are we saying? Let us have appropriate conceptual definitions of income and put appropriate tax laws and apply them to all and sundry. Perhaps that's where the president now is scoring, saying we must pay And Kibaki, during his reign, he said, we must pay, and all of us must pay. So Wasike is also saying, pay tax. Let us all pay tax. That there is need to reduce these incentives for tax evasion. That there are very many, and as we have seen through the loopholes, very many. If I pledge loyalty, if I support the Ruto regime now, then I can receive those exemptions. Let us reduce those incentives and put obstacles on the way. How can we do this? Suppose we lower the tax rates. What will happen? People will earn more. So if you have more disposable income, you have more money coming to your pocket, then you have no reason why you should look for more money to come to your pocket. Alternatively, why can't we supplement this income tax with other forms of taxes? Why can't we pay tax like on expenditure, so that I'm not taxed now on my salary, the income tax, but I'm paid at the time of I'm taxed at the time of expenditure. Suppose we say that I work for 12 months and 1 month will be taken in a year, will be taken as tax. Will that be sufficient? These are things that we are looking at. Suppose we supplement this income tax with other forms of taxes. Now, the third remedial measure is to have comprehensive returns on personal account. I think the Kenyan government has scored well on this, because as long as you have a national ID, you must file those returns. You must file the tax returns with the taxman, KRA, whether you are a student, as long as you have a national ID. So we have scored that. We are filing returns. And if you have not filed, file now. Even if you file 000, that is a fine. What has made this possible? That there has been compulsory auditing of accounts, especially of those high income taxpayers, and the code numbers have been assigned to them. What do we mean by these code numbers? These are the personal identification numbers, what we commonly refer to as the KRA PIN numbers. Everybody has a PIN number. So you must file against your PIN number, because the PIN number is a requisite thing for any function. For your help, you must have KRA PIN. For anything to transact, you must have the way NSSF is also going to be another serious thing, even in job seeking. That these donations to political parties must all be taxed. And all those accounts of political parties and other NGOs must be taxed. Why? Because people are bringing in mitumba, saying that these ones are for the need, for the poor, for the orphanage. Yet they don't get to the orphanage. They land into the market, tax-free. You say that this is a political, for this political party, but then it lands into people's pockets. Who are the people managing those political parties? Who are the people running those non-government organizations? They are human beings. And we saw that human beings are just human beings. And they are also amenable to temptations. And these are things that are leading to corruption. You saw even in the biblical, the saved fellas. Sorry if you are saved. But we saw that the day of babies. How can a woman give birth twice in a calendar year? We call them miracle babies. Some things we should not listen to them. That the penalty for tax evasion should be related to the tax same rather than income concealed. Why do we say so? Because if it is related to the tax same, then this can be increased and we can make it more punitive. That we must make the penalty to be more punitive. by increasing the value of
Yeah.
There's this thing we call bracket creeping. What is it all about? It's all about issues of tax brackets and playing around with them in the tax schedules so that they play to support the humans, the taxpayers. That there is need for us to give adequate attention to what we refer to as bracket creeping. That when there is inflation as it is now, there is need for the government to increase the salaries of employees. What is the effect? When they increase the salaries of employees like now, employees will get higher salaries. And you remember the buoyancy principle. When you get an increase in the inherent ability of tax revenue to increase with the national income, buoyancy. That when there's an increase in salaries, the employees will also pay more. So who will lose? Nobody will lose. Because you have an increase to cushion you against inflation, but the government is also raising more out of the inflation. That's what we refer to as bracket creeping. And of course, the tax brackets should be frequently adjusted so that we take into account of these other factors like the price rise factor, as what we are going through now. Everybody's crying. People are in the streets demonstrating that the cost of living, the prices of commodities is high, the prices of fuel, the prices of hunger is high. But I will ask a stupid question. This thing was 230 for 2 packets, 2 kg. Now it's 180. So if it reduces from 230 to 180, we go to the streets. When it was 230, we were grabbing and giving defenses and explanations. Kenyans are really Kenyans. Kenyans are truly Kenyans. You and me, we are troublemakers and troubleshooters. Let's rethink. But it's the duty of the government to vary those tax brackets, as we saw in one of the principles. It must be easy for people to understand and for the government to administer. So these are things that the government might do. And you look at them, you can evaluate the Kenya government and see what measures have they put in place, what haven't they done. And by so doing, we'll be evaluating the Kenya's tax system appropriately. This internet is fluctuating. Now we need to look at this animal that we are referring to as the income tax. We need to look at this animal that we are saying the income tax. Because in the objectives of this topic, we need to know the calculation of the income tax. I wish that we start these calculations next week. We pick up from here and proceed to look at index numbers next week as we conclude. So the cut will come, will be done the first week of April. Part 2, the first week. The exam has been scheduled for day 1, 14th of April. So I'll be giving the cut the first week. Those of you who didn't do the cut, I don't know what I'll do to you. Because some of you are calling, giving excuses. I think we'll get direction. But don't miss cut 2. I repeat, cut 2 will be done the first week of April. We'll strive to see to it if we can conclude the course next week. And because of that, we would wish that we start the class at 7:30 so that by 8 we'll have completed the discussion on income tax. Then we can move to see to it that we look at the index numbers as we conclude the course. Quickly from the chat. Maandamano, I don't do that. Undergoing the price of diminishing marginal returns. What is that now? My screen is not moving. Yeah, it's been moving. 805 here in the New messages. Thanks for the lesson, sir. Yes, nice, sir. Send us notes on matrices, please. Yes. When do exams start? The timetable was released. The exam is on 14th. Ukosawa, so bring calculations in second cut. Why? The decision of what to set will be mine. It will be done online. Grammar's rule not well understood. Come for consultations. If you have issues, come for consultations. Thanks for the good lecture. Cut 2 equal calculations. I don't know. Makeup cut. I don't know Munongo whether we'll have a makeup cut or not. In theory, but the previous calculations, the fraud. Come for consultations. Utakuwa unamaliza lesson next week ama if we will be there on time. If not, I'll push it to the first week of April. Tumalize alafu ndio tufanye cut. Bring calculation the second cut. Mnataka kukopiana, naogopa. Endelea kuogopa. Uzitume kwa LMS kindly. Yes. Put detailed notes. Which office? My office is ABB 214. Hata kuna mwanafunzi alikuja nikampea hizi notes. It's a Muslim lady who came. You've said when is cut 2, sir? I repeat, cut 2, the first week of April. Consultation room ABB 214. I gave you my phone number. You can call. Second, cannot make cut 2 to be final mark. No. You must have 2 cuts. Where can I find you? I've said. Where do we come for consultation? I've said. You've said when is cut 2? I've repeated. You are, where are you located? I've said. Consultation wapi? Room gani? Turudie cut because sisi wengine submit. I don't know. You should be compliant. Taxation is complicated, of course. Kujia kachupa, kasoda, yes. Ilete job wa Marwa. Some I cut. Yangu submit. It can't submit itself unless you press the button submit. If not, time was over. Kunywa soda kwa bili yako, nitalipa. Atakunywa soda kwa bili yako, nitalipa. Yangu dada ndakuwa nimelipa bwana. Tumalizie hii kama taxi saa hii. Acha watu wakaya watulie kwanza. Waende waangalie consult your matrix algebra. 3x3, Grammar's rule and the like. Your phone number, my phone number is like everywhere. Students have it. Ask the class reps, they will give you. I'm on the wall. Will the card be online or physical? The card will be online. Toa chai bwana. Chai kujia kama una nguvu. Tumemaliza. Kujia mzinga kwa bili yako. Wengine mnafanya mchezo. Please weka kwa YouTube today's lecture. Mnakataa kuja alafu mnasema weka kwa YouTube. So thank you so much. Let us meet next week, same time, 7:30 in the morning, so that we see if we can conclude the course next week. It will have calculations. So tukuje mapema. We hope internet itatumbua. Thank you. Wafungulie tusikie jina naongea.
Bye, sir.
Ako kwa hiyo
Ni watu wa Mani mko wapi? Hao watu wa Chelsea na Mani umeenda wapi?
atile kujia mzinga. Anaingia lek mzinga. Lek kujia mzinga.
Alikwambia Leka anatumia mzinga ni nani?
Imebidi niachane na mwanawai. Lego